Welcome back to the Comp Closet podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Sarah Moore, and today I am joined by a truly inspiring health, fitness, and mindset coach who has been through an incredible transformation herself. Sophie Hill, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
No worries. I'm so excited to hear more about your journey because even just from what you've shared, on Instagram throughout the years has been super inspiring. So can you take us back to the beginning of your weight loss journey and let me know what motivated you to start this transformation?
Yeah, of course. Well, I think there's quite a lot of aspects that kind of come into the start of it. So I'll just kind of give you a bit of a background around my childhood because I was always the bigger kid. In all my classrooms growing up, I was always the tallest and also the biggest, and it just kind of became my persona. That's the fat funny friend, if you want to call it that. And despite all of that, I still had really great active role model parents because they would always be at the gym or out exercising, and so that kind of became a part of me as well. I played every sport under the sun, but no matter what, I was still bigger. And then I went to university, and alcohol became a bit of a weekend event, and my health really declined. I gained a lot of weight, and at the end of uni, I kind of started working and realized I need to make a bit of a change. And that's when I picked up all of the fad diets. So I would go really hard on like keto or something, and I'd lose all this weight, and then I'd stop, and then I'd gain it back and more. And it just became that cycle, which I know a lot of people kind of fall into. And then COVID happened, and I moved back to New Zealand, and I was living with my parents, working remotely in a office, and became very antisocial, and the weight was just piling back on, and I thought I really need to do something now or this is going to get problematic. I'd had my doctor tell me that I was pre-diabetic, and I'd kind of started that medication, and I realized that's just not what I wanted for my life. And you hit 30 and you kind of think, there's got to be more to this, and that's exactly what I felt. So I joined an Ep.49 and started a challenge with them. And what really kick-started me, and this might sound terrible, but I had a coach at the check-in that said, well, what's your goal for this challenge? And I said, I really want to lose 10 kilos. And she looked at me and she said, I think you need to find something that's a bit more achievable. And to me, that was a challenge. I was like, I'm going to show you. And sure enough, I did. I lost 11 kilos in that challenge. And the only difference that I'd found was I'd had another coach that had offered some assistance with my nutrition, like with food, which I'd never done before. I'd always done that on my own. And that was probably the biggest change that I felt, that I kind of looked at it and I went, this is actually something I could do forever. This isn't something I'm going to stop in a few weeks. Like I can carry this on. So that was probably the Kickstarter.
Yeah, incredible. That's insane that your whole, massive journey through competing and all those things as well just stemmed from signing up for F45 and starting that
Yeah.
challenge. So, yeah, that's amazing. What were some of the initial challenges that you faced when you began your fitness journey?
Well, I'd always been active, so that really wasn't a problem in terms of getting to the gym. I'd kind of found my discipline in that. When I commit myself to something, I know I'm making a promise to myself, so I just do it. But the food was always the biggest thing for me. And I think the biggest struggle I had with that initially was it was so much food. Like I just couldn't believe how much food I was eating. I was struggling to get it in. And that's where that understanding of nutrition really came in, where I was like, man, if I actually sit and plan my meals, I can not be hungry during the day and still, be active and doing great on a day-to-day basis. And so that was a big shock to me, was just how much food I was consuming and still losing like two kilos a week. And I know for the first couple of weeks, bit of inflammation and stuff. But yeah, that was very eye-opening.
Absolutely. And did you kind of struggle mentally to eat all that food after, all those years of restrictions and bad diets beforehand?
Yeah, I think I did. I remember distinctly in the first couple of weeks calling my coach and being like, this is too much food and it's not going to work. I don't believe this is going to work. And he just kept saying, trust me, like just try it for 2 weeks. And I thought, all right, I'll give you 2 weeks. And sure enough, and then I knew the food was going to come down over the process. So it was kind of easier to get my head around. But I also just went back to being like, well, this is a choice. You can choose to give it a go or you can choose not to. So I'm going to continue to choose giving this a go.
Absolutely. And what do you think helped you overcome those issues? Was it just solely getting a coach and trusting that process?
Yeah, I really think it was. And, over the years, I'd done all these diets, but then I found myself at a point where I was doing so many different parts of different diets. And, it just all combined didn't work. So if you find one that works for you, and commit to that, it's going to work. But like I was doing half keto, half fasting, half no sugar, all of it combined. So it just didn't really make sense. But ultimately, all of them will work if you're in a deficit, right? So
Yeah,
just commit to
absolutely.
one.
I think that's the hardest part. Like when you're trying all those fad diets and nothing's working, you kind of convince yourself that like nothing's going to work for you. Like there's something wrong with
Yeah.
you, nothing's going to work, or like it's just going to take so long. And it's hard committing to that process initially and just trusting it and like getting those first results, I feel is the hardest part. Is that how you felt?
Yeah, 100%. But as soon as you start seeing those results, that motivation just flows. Like you're like, oh, this is working. And that's, what I'm going towards. It's all kind of on flow. Every morning there's motivation there, something's happening.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then after that initial transformation, what inspired you to transition from focusing just on weight loss to stepping on the stage to compete? Because that's a massive goal.
It is. And I think at the time I was just so, nah, this isn't for me. Because what had happened was I hit my 40 kilo loss and I was like, yeah, cool. I'm happy in my body. This was my initial goal. And I had to find another why. And I found it really difficult to try and get up each morning and just, carry on with my routine. And I was at a point with the people that I was training with where people were looking to me for inspiration. And, I don't take that lightly. Again, I think that was a bit of a motivation in itself, was just, keep showing people that it's possible. So that kind of became my why. But in the same breath, I had my coach going, hey, I used to compete. You should have a look at this. And I was looking at it going, no way, like there's no chance I'm going to be able to do that. This guy is no way, shape, or form going to step on stage. I think a part of it was confidence. I lacked a lot of confidence in myself. But also, I'd never seen someone that was my size that had got to the point of being able to get on stage. And maybe it's just a matter of I hadn't done research or looked into it, but there was just no one visible to me. But then I also started to think back to when my mum used to come home from the gym and she'd tell me about these like 60, 70-year-old people that were bodybuilding, and they'd tell me about like how amazing they were doing. And I'd always thought to myself, one day maybe I'll do that. But I never had a plan or anything. And then I walked away from my coach after he showed me all the photos, and we started watching some WBFF shows at the time. And I think it just kind of stuck with me a little bit. And I kept thinking about it. And I thought, why not? Like, let's give it a go. Maybe now is the time. It is, that one day that I had spoken of when I was younger. And so I committed to it. I picked a show that was local with ICN and thought I'll aim for that. And if I don't like it, I don't have to carry on, but at least you gave it a go. I'm not one to give up on a challenge. So I competed at ICN and I walked away with a couple of medals and I was like, what the heck? This is me. It was quite cool for me, my inner confidence and my inner child, just to be like, you can do anything that you put your mind to. And yeah, that's kind of where the love for it. I just started to really enjoy the process. And, when you do start to see things move in your body, it's very motivating and it's very easy to say no. And you build confidence through all of your actions. And yeah, I fell in love with the process, which I think is probably one of the most important things if you're going to compete.
Yeah, I love that. And I think another key part is like, building confidence through that action. Because obviously you said you were so scared to compete and it was a big confidence thing. But obviously you just, you trusted your coach again and you committed to those actions and you built that confidence as well. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that you think kind of helped build your confidence in prep, or was it just a matter of actually getting through it, doing those actions and showing up and, doing it on the day?
I was having a plan too, and having a coach is so massive. I just didn't realize how much I needed that guidance through this entire process. But I think also when it comes to the confidence piece, like I had so much self doubt. And I mean, even now I still battle with it sometimes. And affirmations kind of became a big part in my life. And especially when it became to start competing. I use this example with my old clients, but I am an athlete. I just used to repeat that to myself over and over and over again. And eventually I started to believe it. And, I started using the terminology with my close friends and my family. I'm an athlete, so I can't do this. Or oh, I've got some athlete training this weekend. It sounds, I don't know, maybe to some people a little bit cranky, but it worked for me. It helped me build that confidence and shape my actions through that. And yeah, that's where the confidence came from, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that affirmation. And did you struggle at all with like saying no to things with friends and family and like missing out on certain foods and that when you were on prep?
Initially, I think the people around me did struggle with it a little bit. They're like, "Oh, why can't you?" Saying no. But once I explained, this is the process and this is what it looks like, and this is the date that my show is. So after that, let's organize a few things to catch up. That explaining and helping them understand, I think, really brought them on board. And I would go to events, but I'd take my own food. And yes, they might look at it and go, "Oh, that spit stink." I'm like, "Yep, cool," but it's my life, it's me working on my goals, so it's no worries. And at the end of the day, people don't remember what you ate, they remember that you were there. So that was the most important thing to me, was just making sure that I was still present as much as I could. But yeah, I think it is difficult for people around you to kind of get used to it, especially when I was always the person that was like, "Yeah, give me a glass of wine, I'd love to join in on this," and now all of a sudden I'm saying, "No, I'm good, thanks, I'll just stick with my water." Yeah, definitely difficult for others to come to terms with.
Yeah, absolutely. But they definitely come around, don't they?
They do, yeah, absolutely. And I think also just shifting that perspective of, socializing doesn't always need to be around food. I know it's a very easy thing to do and to catch up with your friends and that, but just simply suggesting, how about we go for a walk instead, or go and get a coffee, is definitely, there's alternatives. There's ways that you can make it work.
Yes, that is so true. So, how was your first experience competing? Like, you obviously won a few medals. How did that feel, and how was it kind of what you expected?
I think so. I do think it was. It was a little bit unusual for me stepping on that particular stage, because it was where we used to have our high school like end of year gathering. So it was a bit weird standing up there and just having this flashback to like I'm back at school. But I loved my first experience. I think because it was a smaller show and I felt a little bit more comfortable with it being, a smaller crowd and, a smaller number of competitors. Everyone got along really well. It was very pleasant backstage, and everyone's just so supportive in this industry. I found, as soon as you see someone else that commits to bodybuilding, everyone will just get around them, and there's always support there. There's always people that you can learn from and talk to. And it's just, yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. It was cool. I think that was the first real stage fright experience I'd had as well. I wasn't quite expecting that feeling stepping out there, but it's definitely something that you can kind of get used to and practice. And I tried to visualize that feeling again over and over before I did my second show, just to kind of feel a bit more settled with it. And I think that worked a lot. But for that second show, when I did, it's now FMG in the Gold Coast, it was a whole different experience for me, and not in a bad way, just more in a very much an enlightening way. I remember going to registration night and just feeling so overwhelmed, because I'd never seen so many people that were so beautiful and had worked so hard. And it was just this, I don't know, this gut wrenching feel of I don't belong here. And it wasn't even show day. And so I remember going back to the hotel that night, and I cried because I was like terrified. But I just told myself, you've come this far and you've done all of this. Like, perhaps none of these people have come from where you have, and it's a different journey. So don't compare yourself, go out and use this as a celebration for what you have achieved. And that kind of changed things for me. So the next day was really, really enjoyable. And I don't know, I like to take every opportunity. And so just getting to know people and having a chat, even though everyone's feeling nervous, just looking in awe at the people that were so incredibly driven and motivated. And I just am so inspired by people that do bodybuilding, because it's not easy. And I just thrived off not being the best in the room, if you know what I mean. I really like leveraging off people that are better than you to make yourself be better as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that mindset shift, like after feeling so overwhelmed at, registration night, which I think is something that more people should talk about, because it is overwhelming as a first time competitor, especially if you don't know anyone or you don't know many people. Like, walking into this room where there's just so much noise and like so much going on, it's often quite a small space, and you've got to go and like get your number and kind of mingle with people. Like, it can be really overwhelming. And I think that, first time competitors just need to be prepared for that, and just know that you can, talk to people that you don't know, and just introduce yourself to other competitors as well, because even if they look scary, they're likely feeling the same way as you. And there's always so many first time competitors there too. So yeah, I love how you went home and you kind of had that mindset shift for show day, and seeing that as a celebration as well, because that obviously would have made the whole process so much more enjoyable. So tell me about like what happened after that show. Obviously you had show day, and then like how did the post show phase go, and what did you kind of set as your next goals?
Initially, I had the goal that I wanted to reverse out and do that really well. I knew going into show I'd done everything 100%, so I was like, let's commit to this reverse 100%. The day after show came, and all of that went out the window. I made every mistake that first time competitors can make, and it was kind of a downward spiral from there. I was pretty, to be fair, I was pretty good for a couple of weeks, but I did have a holiday booked and back to Melbourne to visit a lot of my closest friends, and it was a lot of celebration given that I hadn't seen them for a couple of years and all of this change had happened in the meantime. So yeah, we had some pretty cool stuff on, and I don't regret it. It was definitely some of my fondest memories of competing was that time after show where I got to celebrate with my friends. But as I came back, I realized I don't have a next goal, and I was trying so hard to find what that was. I knew I didn't want to compete that next year. I wanted to commit to a build phase, and then I just couldn't seem to get back on track. Training was fine. I was cool with that, and I felt like I had so much more energy, but I just wasn't sticking to my meal plan and I wasn't tracking, and that was a huge mistake, and one that I'm definitely have learnt from and won't do again. But in the midst of that, I also changed coaches. So having a whole different perspective from a female has been a massive change for me, and one that I'm really grateful that I did. I think that acknowledgement that we have hormones and there's a lot of contributors to that has been really important for me. So that transition wasn't great, but I have plans to not make that happen again. Yeah, I think there's a lot of learnings that were had during that period.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard transition, like for your first kind of post comp experience. And like you said, like as a woman as well, we do have so many hormones and so much other stuff going on that can impact like how you're feeling and what your body needs. And like your body is trying to give you all of these signals, but then sometimes the signals are out of whack because you've been in a deficit for so long. So it is definitely like a very confusing time. And then obviously trying to balance that with celebrations and things is so difficult. But obviously, like, you know, you've learned from that and you kind of recognize that. So what advice would you give someone for their first reverse diet or post comp phase?
Be kind to yourself, and just remember that it is so not sustainable to be in that stage weight range for a long period of time, and it's normal to gain a little bit of weight, and there are so many other focuses that you can have other than the scale that can make that transition a lot easier. I think that was a huge part for myself. And you know, for years I've been willing that scale down, and I got it to the lowest I ever could. So then seeing it go back up again, I was like, I've undone everything. I'm back to square one. I'm going to have to go through this 10 months of weight loss all over again to, you know, get to this point. And it was just a snowball effect. So just understanding that I could have been a lot kinder to myself in that period. You know, one meal or two meals with your friends and family isn't going to undo months and months of the work that you've done. Just simply get back on track and just carry on. It's, you know, probably easy to say, but
Yeah, no, I love that advice. And obviously, the build phase is a significant shift from focusing on weight loss and always seeing those scales go down. So, how did you actually switch your mindset to embrace building muscle and be okay with the scales going up again?
I found those performance targets, those goals a lot more of a focus for me. I just stopped caring what the scale said and thought, that's my coach's problem. You know, as long as I send it to them every week, they can deal with it. I just have to worry about following the plan. And those performance metrics have helped me actually improve my training more than I ever have. You know, I used to think I was training to failure, to an RPE 8, but in reality, I wasn't. And having that experience now of just pushing that little bit more and really seeing what I'm capable of has improved that a lot, which I'm really excited about, because I used to always watch videos of like, I remember this YouTube video of Jackson Peos and Hattie Boydell, and I used to watch them train. I'm like, I'm not doing that. How do I do that? And so just really pushing myself to say, what's your max? Like, what can you really do here without injuring yourself? Let's see. And that's been just the biggest change. I really don't care what the scale says. And I think I also remember that this is a choice. At any point, I could choose to go back into a deficit and lose weight again, but I've got other goals now. So let's just keep working on that. It's a long-term game, and I have trust in my coach. We'll just stick to the plan.
Yeah, that is so true. I think it's so worth remembering, like when you're entering a build phase, that it is a two-way door. It's not like you enter the build phase and you can never get out. Like you've obviously, done a prep before and you've lost this weight, so you know how to do it and you've got a coach to help you. So I think just, yeah, like you said, seeing that weight as data for your coach is so, so powerful.
Yeah, I also, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I also just wanted to say, like, even watching your process, I mean, I've followed you for a number of years now, but watching you go into that build phase and just fully commit and sharing every aspect of it made me go, this is so normal, you know? And I just feel like it's so important to be sharing that kind of thing and like potential struggles or how, like, I just love watching your body transform even through your build phase. It's like, this is so cool. And how it's changed from the last build phase to now. Like, I think just having a bit of an eye on kind of what's happening around you, maybe exploring a few more people online that you could look at, it's inspiring and it does help you commit to that process when you see people like yourself have those results.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those kind words. And I absolutely agree. Like, more people need to be sharing that build phase and all the phases of the journey because, like, so many people just post, shred photos online or like weight loss photos, but they don't share those in between or when they're actually growing, post comp and the kind of messy part of the build phase rather than just the shredded photo to the next shredded photo after you've been through a build and a cut. I think it's important to find people online that are sharing that entire phase so that you feel like your struggles are normalized because it's so normal to struggle with like body image and have a bit more body fat and look a little bit like worse in your build phase.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's super important. I'm glad you brought
Yeah,
that up.
definitely. I think it's also important when we think about like the younger generation. If I think about myself when I was at school and I'm looking at these pictures, I mean, back then it was like Dolly Girlfriend magazines, but, and you just, all you see is these perfectly sculpted bikini bodies. And that was my idea of what I was supposed to look like. And I grew up with that thinking I was never good enough because that's not what I looked like. So to me, it's important to share everything. Like I post workout videos every morning. Half the time I've got my rolls hanging out, whatever. I don't care because I want people to see it and I want children, if they are looking at it, to see that it's normal to have a little bit more fat on you every now and then and it's okay, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love how you share your journey as well. So we'll definitely link all of your socials below so that people can follow along. So
Thank you.
speaking of food as well, how has your relationship with food and nutrition evolved since you started your weight loss journey to now, like being in a build or a body recomp phase?
I love carbs so much. And if you asked, 19-year-old Sophie about carbs, she'd be like, terrible for you. So bad. Don't touch them, you know? And now I'm like, food is fuel. I got to get in as much as I can. I want to build as much muscle as I can and I want to train hard. And I'm not scared of it anymore. It's more of a friendship with food as opposed to constantly just fearing it all the time. And it's a huge change. I love seeing how many carbs I get in a day. I love like looking at my meal plan and going, yes, I get to have this much. It's exciting to me, but it's not every part of me. I definitely have days where I still struggle with that binge eating mindset that I had in the past. But I just remember that that's not who I am anymore. And you eat to train and to fuel yourself, and that's all you need, not live to binge on anything and everything in sight because it tastes good.
Yeah, I love that. And what advice do you have for someone who's struggling mentally to commit to a build phase?
I think I just go back to that. It's a choice. You can choose to switch it off. So give it a go. Commit to it wholeheartedly. Ultimately, you can undo the additional fat that you gained during that period. So it's easy, really, when you think about it. It's like a switch. You can turn it on and off whenever you want to. But it's not forever. Just commit and give it everything.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think something that helps me as well is like having a time frame on my build phase. Like I kind of know my end goal, like why I'm building, and then you'll have a time frame, or you'll even break it down into like sections of the build phase, which I think really helps mentally knowing that it is such a small period of your overall like larger journey. I think that yeah, definitely really helps me.
Yeah, for sure.
So, how has life changed since you first started your fitness journey? Like, since you first did that F45 challenge, how has life changed?
Wow. I changed a lot in terms of what I was doing daily. My life now revolves around I go to the gym every single morning, and that's just a part of my life. I love it, whether it's just for steps or to actually train it's a habit now, it's a routine, and I have a community there now, which is cool. I was coaching for a while there and managed to support other people in their weight loss journeys. And I will continue to do that until the day that I die, because I'm so passionate about people experiencing this feeling for themselves. You know, I have energy, I have this longing to go and do things outside of my comfort zone all the time. It's just really proved to myself that the options of things that you can do are limitless. Like, you really can do so much more than you think. And it's just pushed those boundaries for me a lot. But yeah, I mean, physically, I can go into a Glassons or a store that I never could when I was a kid and buy a pair of shorts, which is crazy to me. I remember the first time that happened, I was like, what? I can buy off the rack? This is crazy. It just sounds nuts, but those little things. I do have one thing that I want to do is I remember going to the Gold Coast when I was probably 20 years old and went to get on a roller coaster at Dreamworld, and it wouldn't close. And I had to get off and walk past everyone, and everyone I knew, they were like, oh, she's too big for this ride. And it was the most embarrassing, gut-wrenching feeling that I think I can still remember it so vividly. And I want to go back and I want to get on that roller coaster and prove that I can do it.
Yes, that'll be such an incredible feeling when you actually like get on that coaster and shut the thing and remember back to that moment. So yeah, that would have been like super, super like embarrassing and hard at the time, but it's so incredible how far you've come, and it'll be amazing when you get back on that roller coaster and actually ride it.
Yeah, for sure. I can't wait for that day.
And what has competing taught you that is applicable to other areas of life?
Yeah, I think there is no limit to who you can become. No matter what it is that you want to achieve, if you make a plan and you make a promise to yourself and you follow the actionable steps, you will get there. It goes for every aspect. I just think that we are often not lifting that ceiling high enough for ourselves. We really do limit ourselves in terms of our thinking, and a large part of that, I think, is the people that you spend time with. So just always aim to not be the smartest person in the room, whether that's at work or among your social circle. Just push the boundaries a little bit and really see what you're capable of.
Yeah, I love that. And for anyone who's inspired by your story as well and might want to start their own transformation journey, what actionable advice would you give them to get started?
This is my favorite question because it's one I wish I asked when I was starting out. My number one advice is just baby steps. Don't make a plan to all of a sudden, in this wave of motivation, go, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week if you've never stepped into the gym before. Just make small, actionable changes in your daily life that will lead and accrue to those huge results. It's much more beneficial for you to be consistent over perfect. You know, there's such a big difference in those words, but they can correlate sometimes. And if you're perfect, you go every day for 10 days and then you quit. But if you're consistent, you go 24 out of the 30 days, and you're going to get so much further with that. So be kind to yourself, small steps, and just increase the things that you're doing to be better every single day. 1% better every day.
Yes, I couldn't agree with that more. And I wish someone told me that at the start of my journey as well, because you really think it's like all or nothing at the start, right? So if someone
Yeah.
told you that at the start of your journey, like just imagine how much faster it would have made the progress, like all those years of fad diets and everything. It could have just been so much faster.
Percent. And like, even with the off-plan meal, I used to allow myself one a week, and if I had two, I'd be beating myself up bad about it. But you're not going to gain 10 kilos from one meal, just like you're not going to lose 10 kilos from one meal. So just pick up where you left off and just start again.
Yeah, so true. And what are your goals going forward for your fitness journey as a whole and competing?
Yeah, I am going to finish off my build with Alicia, and I've just been loving this process. So I'm really excited to get into the next stage. So I do want to compete this year. I do have a show picked out, which I'll be working towards, and potentially a second. But we'll see how that goes. I'm excited just to prove to myself one more time that I can do it. Whether it is something that it's a long-term game for me, I don't know. And that might be a little controversial to say, to be fair, because a lot of people, start the competing process and want to win, want to go pro and win the crown and everything. But for me, it's the journey and teaching myself something new every day and just learning as much as I can. So I will continue to do it until that becomes boring, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also have a little bit of a curveball. I haven't actually told my coach this yet, but I'm going to do high rocks in December as well. So I did that
Dang.
earlier this year, so I'm going to do another one this year as well. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that is very exciting. So, a little bit of a sidebar. How was the first High Rocks and the training for
Yeah,
that?
it was so good. I honestly did not train like I probably should have for it. Ultimately, I've learned it's a running race, so just run as much as you can, which was a bit of a challenge in a build phase. And my coach wasn't super impressed, I think, when I threw that curveball in there in my build phase, but it was very short term. But yeah, that was cool. It was a very interesting experience. I do love that whole hit training and the environment that it was with so many people around. It was really cool. Definitely, I had that same, like, what am I doing here on the first day when I went to have a look? But again, just shift that mindset to you can do this, just give it a go. You're just here to, try something and prove to yourself that you can do it.
Yeah, incredible. Well, I can't wait to see and follow along your journey for the rest of the year with so many exciting things going on and shows and high rocks. Where can the listeners find you online to follow your journey?
Yeah, my Instagram is at becoming so fit. And it's the same on TikTok as well, but I'm pretty hopeless on TikTok to be fair. Instagram's the place.
Amazing. I will link those down below. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing more of your journey. It's been absolutely incredible and super, super inspiring.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
No worries. And thank you to our listeners as well. If you could share this podcast to your stories, let us know what you learned, tag both of us, tell us what you're doing while you're listening to it. We love to see it. And of course, follow on whatever platform you're listening to this on because it really does help us to grow and get on more incredible guests like Sophie. Thanks so much.